Afghan civilians with little choice but to bear the brunt of a chaotic country where humanitarian aid remains crucial. People from different provinces have flooded into Kabul. Internal refugees spiked to around 550,000 since the beginning of this year. As roughly half of all Afghans, or some 18 million people, depend on humanitarian aid, it is essential that basic services go uninterrupted. UN Secretary General António Guterres told the UN Security Council. He also appealed for the Council to stand as one in ensuring human rights are protected, humanitarian aid continues, and that Afghanistan is not a haven for terror groups. On the front line from Afghanistan, Isabelle Moussard Carlsen, the head of the UN Humanitarian Office in Afghanistan, talks to me. I want you to help us a little bit about the latest situation on the ground in Kabul. As the head of the UN Coordination Office for Humanitarian Affairs on the ground in Afghanistan, what is the latest?
So today in Afghanistan, we are looking at many people arriving in Kabul from other large cities, seeking for safety, moving away from the conflict, and also all the other difficulties these population are facing. And I'm thinking especially of the drought. But the more recent arrival in Kabul are really linked to the conflict.
Where are they usually coming from? Do we know? And do we know approximate numbers right now in Kabul?
They're coming from the different provinces, mostly Logar and Kunar provinces. And in terms of the numbers, what we have seen in terms of internally displacement for the last couple of weeks and months now is about 550,000 internally displaced since the beginning of the year. And we see a very strong increase in those numbers in the last couple of months, especially since May, with 80,000 people being displaced on a monthly basis.
And now probably much more, as it's very hard to count at this moment, right?
We see a lot of population movement, and it's indeed quite difficult. But the teams on the ground are trying to continue assessing the needs of all these people and to provide emergency response to make sure that they're not left without any humanitarian aid.
So how are you helping really?
Yeah, so the programs, the emergency programs are about providing emergency food. We're also looking at ensuring that they have access to potable water, to all the other essential services such as medical care. But we're also looking at education programs that are still ongoing and have not been stopped during these difficult weeks.
So how are you working with the Taliban and some of the other forces that are active in the capital, Kabul? Could you give us some example of how you are interacting with one another?
Well, as humanitarian actors and as the humanitarian community, it is in our mandate to talk and negotiate with all parties in presence. Our key role in OCHA is to negotiate access to ensure that all the humanitarian actors can provide the necessary humanitarian response to the people in need, and also to ensure that the people in need have access to the essential services. So this is the conversations we're having with all parties in presence.
What does that mean? For example, Taliban already in control of most of the country, as they claim, and also the city of Kabul. How are you working with them? What about the airport? As we know, there's a lot of chaos and confusion. Would they be operational in terms of providing support to deliver the necessary equipment and necessities?
We have been negotiating access with the different parties in presence for a long time. So this is our normal way of working as humanitarians. And therefore, when we negotiate access, we also negotiate for some programs to be taking place to ensure that the vulnerable people have also the necessary aid. So this is how we're working. We are ensuring that all parties in presence will let us work, let us have access to the people in need, and will also respect the needs assessments that we're doing. So when the needs assessment are done, we're customizing the response to the people and to their reality, and we're ensuring that all parties in presence understand that and accept that.
Could you describe one or two examples of how you and your colleagues are doing your work?
When we're doing the needs assessment, we have teams from different operational sector, for example, from water and sanitation, from food security, which will be looking at the food aspects of it, for health. And these teams are getting together, and they're going to address the different population and see what are their needs, what are their priorities, and we're talking to them first. And usually the people we're meeting will tell us our key priority is health, or our key priority is access to potable water because we don't have access to water, or the first thing we need is food because we haven't been eating for the time we were traveling all the way to Kabul, so we're very in need of having urgent access to food. We also look at health, especially if there is very young children. We know today in Afghanistan that 50% of the children under 5 are suffering of acute severe malnutrition, which is a deadly disease. And so these are the things that we will be looking at. And these teams, when they arrived in those sites with the displaced population, these are the questions they will be asking. What are your priority needs? Once that is assessed and we have a good idea of who are the people and what their needs are, then other teams are getting ready to do the response. And we will really customize the response to the needs. That's how humanitarian work is being done.
We understand the UN Security Council recently had an urgent meeting on the issue of Afghanistan. There are certain statements coming out. How much will that provide some kinds of policy and morale support in a way to you and your office in Kabul?
It is very well received that the Security Council and all the leadership in the UN are very concerned by the situation in Afghanistan and are very concerned by the ability of the humanitarian community to stay and deliver and to ensure the protection of the most vulnerable people of Afghanistan. So it is very important that the world is aware and understand what kind of humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Afghanistan.
You think about that, nobody expected, I would assume, including your team, that things would change so much just over the past 1 week. So how were you, accepting the news, the information that are coming in all the time, and try to adjust your plan in a different way?
We can say that we have been anticipating, and the humanitarian plan for Afghanistan was anticipating a worsening of the situation from the drought, and also was anticipating more displacement as we could see the conflict was increasing. So the plan that was made for 2021 had already integrated a number of these aspects. And yes, adaptability is one of the most important skill we have in this work. And so I am actually really proud of the team I'm working with, because they've been incredibly adaptable and able to readjust to the new circumstances.
I know you are a very experienced person in terms of handling humanitarian crisis, but when you think about the country of Afghanistan, where you are, over the past 20 years and beyond, there's one after another humanitarian crisis taking place. So sitting in your chair right now, Isabelle, how do you see the nature of your work compared to the other parts of the world? What are you trying to adjust that uniquely compared to your other assignments?
Afghanistan has always been quite a unique country in many ways. The Afghan people are incredibly resilient and have been incredible at adapting also to all the different crises. But I think this is very sad for us to see that once again, the Afghan people have to face more crisis, more conflict, and what we wish for the Afghan people is really a peaceful country.
Another issue about women and girls, the world is watching very closely. I know you are not working for UN Women, but when it comes to humanitarian affairs, it also is the human rights of everyone. So how are you looking at the issue from your unique perspective in the office?
So the situation for women and girls will be monitored very closely. It is absolutely essential that women and girls have access to all the essential services. We also want to ensure that in the future our female staff can continue working and can be completely part of society. So these will be very important subjects to monitor and follow in the future.
Could you describe to us how your female workers now from the office and your supporting teams are doing on the streets of Kabul, for example? Your wardrobe, the way you are working and talking to people, do you see anything different from, let's just say, a few months ago?
I think everyone is watching to see how they're going to adapt. It's very early days and probably a bit too early to make statements about how things will be. But I think everyone is cautious and cautiously watching what will be the situation.
We've been hearing, Isabelle, over the past few days, different forces in Afghanistan have been making different statements and press conferences from the Taliban, from the Afghan government, from the so-called, from the new, even someone claimed to be the new president of Afghanistan. And how are you in the office digesting this information to help plan your work? Tell me more about that.
I think what needs to be done is really to continue having those negotiation and those conversation about ensuring that the humanitarian actors are able to do their work in the full sense of that. And I think for us, these conversations will be very important in the coming days. And that's how we will see how we will be moving forward.
Isabelle Moussard Carlsen, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your precious time. Really appreciate it. Our special program on Afghanistan today. That's all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.